We're looking at the Ford F-150 and the Toyota Tundra, two of America's most beloved trucks. We'll peek into the technical evolution of both trucks. We'll also see their best model years and their worst if you're looking to buy a used truck. So buckle up and let's get going. In 2016, a Louisiana man did over 1 million miles on his Toyota Tundra. His truck was an '07 model, and it was 8 years old and still going strong. He had been logging about 125,000 miles per year. Of course, he had regularly serviced his truck, and that's why it lasted extremely long like that. In fact, he had serviced the truck at the dealership 117 times over the years. Anyway, that year, Toyota gave him a brand new 2016 Toyota Tundra in exchange for his '07 model. Then Toyota disassembled his old one to study its durability and reliability. Of course, many people already view Toyota as a very reliable brand, and this just goes to show further that if you maintain your car regularly, you can go a long way. But guess who's the biggest competitor of the Tundra? It's the Ford F-150. It's been America's #1 best-selling pickup truck since 1977. How do you compete with a popular vehicle like that? Well, let's rewind and see how the race started between these two. The Ford F-Series began in 1948, but it wasn't until 1975, during the 6th generation of the F-Series, that America saw the F-150 line. For full history, check out my video on the Ford F-150. It was 1999. Toyota had another pickup already in the market when they released the Tundra. But the Tundra was the first full-size pickup from a Japanese manufacturer to be built in North America. The first generation Tundra immediately stood out from other Toyota pickups. It was the first Toyota pickup to offer a V8 engine. Toyota sold over 100,000 vehicles in its first year. Despite this, American perception of the Tundra was that it was a smaller and weaker truck than the competing Ford trucks. It would be an uphill battle for the Tundra. Around this time, Ford F-Series was already in its 10th generation. At the time, the driving experience was more car-like. That's because Ford wanted their trucks to have the comforts of SUVs. In 2001, the F-150 became the first vehicle of its size to offer 4 full-size doors. This model offered the 5.4-liter V8. It was the first overhead camshaft engine ever installed in a full-size pickup truck. In the meantime, the Tundra was still in its infancy. Toyota gave the Tundra a new grille. They also introduced the double cab, which had 4 doors and additional space for backseat passengers to better compete in the market. Meanwhile, Ford launched its 11th generation F-Series in 2004. The F-150 was even larger and taller. This generation saw a new platform, including rear shock absorbers that were installed outside the frame to reduce wheel bounce and improve ride quality, and in the independent front suspension, vacuum-driven front wheel hubs for all-wheel drive versions were added. In '04 and '05, Ford F-150 received many awards and recognition. This generation really paved the way in taking F-150 more mainstream. In the meantime, the Tundra had a towing capacity of 7,100 pounds. It was a good step forward for the Tundra. It got positive safety reviews. The problem was, it didn't offer full-size truck drivers enough of what they expected from a large pickup. And Toyota understood that. That's why Toyota introduced its 2nd generation Tundra. The Tundra got larger than the previous generation. Stylistically, it has similarities with the Tacoma. It also offered a brand new engine, a 5.7-liter V8 engine that output 381 horsepower. Toyota wanted the Tundra to appeal more to construction workers. That's why this generation Tundra started seeing extra large door handles, a deck rail system, integrated tow hitch, even a headrest that would fit a person wearing a hard hat. Meanwhile, at Ford, the F-150 was growing in size again, almost getting close to heavy-duty trucks. Starting in 2009, for the first time in history, a V8 engine came standard on all F-Series models, instead of a 6-cylinder engine. The F-150 was also noticeably taller and larger. All versions of the cab had 4 doors. Overall, this generation F-150 appeared even more aggressive, as Ford was now starting to race with the Ram 1500 and Chevy Silverado. In the meantime, the Tundra was still in its second generation, but 2014 saw a major design update. In fact, some people consider it the start of a third generation, but actually it's not, because there were no changes to the chassis or powertrain. But the changes that did come included a larger grille, more prominent fenders on front and back, and overall a more chiseled look. Toyota also made performance improvements, like better suspension and handling. That same year, 2014, Toyota introduced a fresh new trim called 1794. The 1794 edition commemorated the founding of the cattle ranch in San Antonio that was the site of the Toyota assembly plant where the Tundras were built. The 1794 edition reflected a Western cowboy theme. For example, it had saddle brown leather upholstery, imitation suede inserts, and matching leather bits on the shift console, door trim, and instrument panel. Meanwhile, soon after, Ford introduced the 13th generation F-Series. For the first time, the F-150 came with aluminum panels versus steel panels from previous generations. This makes the F-150 lighter by 750 pounds. The F-150 also turned more family-friendly starting with this era. Ford is currently at its 14th generation F-Series. The 2021 F-150 underwent a redesign of 92% of its parts. Ford also introduced an optional gasoline-electric hybrid powertrain. Ford plans to introduce a fully electric F-150 by 2022, compete with the GMC Hummer EV and Tesla Cybertruck. In the meantime, Toyota introduced the new special edition models of the 2021 Tundra, called Trail and Nightshade. The changes focus more on the truck styling rather than feature improvements. As with all vehicles, both the F-150 and the Tundra have had their share of good years and bad. Some model years are just better than others, and some model years have received more consumer complaints than others. So if you want a reliable, used F-150 or Tundra, which model years should you consider and which ones should you avoid? Let's start with F-150. Year 2019 is worthy because that year saw the highest towing capacity of any of its contemporaries, towing over 13,000 pounds. It's a serious truck, but it's also comfortable. This generation saw a few safety recall concerns and a limited number of concerns about the powertrain, but overall it's generally reliable. Years 2018, 2017, and 2014 rated well overall too. What about years to avoid in the Fords? That includes 2004 to 2009. Years 2004 and 2005 especially were disaster years for Ford and caused Ford to lose some customer trust. That's because those model years face severe engine and transmission failures. There's been a lot of recalls for these model years too, including recalls for inadvertent airbag deployment, which can actually be quite dangerous and cause serious injury. Except for the year 2014, the F-150s for model years 2010 to 2016 fared better, but still took a beating. Complaints for those years were about power loss while driving and also braking problems. The brakes would fail and the rotors would need to be replaced earlier than expected. Well, what about the Toyota Tundra? Among the best in the used Tundras include the model year 2015 because it got a facelift from the previous model and had noteworthy off-roading capability. The 2013 Tundra is worth noting because it won several awards, including 5-star safety option from the National Highway Traffic Safety Association. It was also the first Tundra model to offer the TRD Rock Warrior trim. The 2009 model year had one of the fewest customer complaints. But what about the Tundra's bad years? Well, one model year received the most customer complaints. The 2007 Tundra was problematic because it had the most engine problems, anywhere from air injection pump failure, sticking air pumps, and knocking in the pistons. There's also reports from the NHTSA about problems with the speed control, engine cooling system, and even accelerator pedal. Model years 2008 and 2005 had similar engine concerns, but not as many complaints as 2007. But the worst Tundra to date is the model year 2012, based on volume of customer complaints and average repair costs. The most common problem for that year was air induction pump failure, and that's an expensive repair job. It can be over $3,000. Another common problem for that year has been early transmission failure, even as early as 9,000 to 10,000 miles. And that's not cheap either. It can be over $5,000. That all said, here's an interesting fact about the 2012 Tundra. Did you know that in October 2012, the Toyota Tundra was used to tow the Space Shuttle Endeavour over the Los Angeles freeway? Imagine that. The Space Shuttle weighed 155,000 pounds, and the tow equipment added another 120,000 pounds. The Tundra was only rated to tow 10,000 pounds, and Toyota said the truck was not modified or enhanced to accomplish the tow. Of course, there was a specially designed rig to help the truck pull the shuttle, but even with that, you can imagine how much muscle and power were still used to the max. Ford's F-Series remains America's best-selling truck for the 44th consecutive year. Last year, Ford sold more than 787,000 of the F-Series. The numbers speak for themselves. These trucks hold their value well. Depending on condition, they can hold around 50% of their original value after 5 years. That's 25% more than average vehicles. The Toyota Tundra doesn't even come close to Ford in sales. Toyota sold over 109,000 Tundras last year, but it is known for longevity, reliability, and good resale value. Even used ones can carry a lot of life if regular maintenance is done. For 8 of the last 9 years, Consumer Reports has named the Tundra the most reliable pickup in America. Even though the Tundra doesn't have all the latest and greatest technology, Tundra's advantage is that it carries the Toyota quality and dependability. But you tell me, which do you like and why? Toyota Tundra, which has potential to drive 1,000,000 miles and can tow a space shuttle, or Ford F-150, one of America's most beloved and most popular trucks, which has stood the test of time and has the sales numbers to show it. We're looking at two American legends, the Ford Mustang and the Chevy Camaro. We'll peek into the technical evolution of these iconic cars to see why America loves these cars, even down to today. We'll also see some of the best model years and the worst. So hop in and let's go for a ride. Did you know that the Ford Mustang is the best-selling two-door sports car in the world? The Mustang has been in continuous production since 1964, going through 6 generations. Its fierce, muscular looks, deep roar, and the way it drives, everything screams power. And you can see why it's the longest Ford in production ever. In the early 1960s, Lee Iacocca was Ford's VP and general manager, and he envisioned a new sporty car for the young American market. Ford started developing the concept of a shoestring budget in quick time. They based the new car concept on the compact Ford Falcon. And in 1964, Ford introduced the Mustang at the World's Fair in New York. Ford thought they'd sell 100,000 units in year 1. But on day 1 alone, they sold 22,000 Mustangs. Thus started the Mustang mania. Little did they know that in year 1, they'd end up selling 4 times more than they estimated. And Mustang would popularize a new genre of automobiles known as pony cars. The original Mustang was made using many components from the Falcon. Ford did this intentionally in order to make the car available at very low cost. The listing price of the first Mustang coupe was under $2,400. That's a bit over $20,000 in today's monetary value. So you can see how affordable it was in its day. In the meantime, Chevrolet took notice. They saw America's love for the Mustang and started developing a new car concept, codenamed Panther. In 1966, GM held a live press conference. Chevrolet General Manager Pete Estes announced a new car concept and revealed the name, Camaro. The press went wild. The story goes that the press asked Chevy product managers what a Camaro was and was told that it was a small, vicious animal that eats Mustangs, and so the competition was on. Chevrolet recognized that their compact, sporty car, the Corvair, with its rear engine design, was declining in sales and popularity. So they decided the Camaro would have the same conventional front engine configuration as the compact Chevy 2 Nova and share many of the Nova components. The Camaro was a hit. The base price was $2,466 and pretty comparable to the Mustang. Chevy sold almost 221,000 Camaros the first year, which is less than half of the Mustang's year 1 sales. During the first generation, Chevy offered many engine options. The Camaro's base engine started with a 3.8-liter inline straight-six engine, with the max option of a 6.5-liter V8. Not long after, Chevy offered a Rally Sport Edition in '67, which had a 4.9-liter V8 engine. The Camaro's large engine displacement did not go unnoticed. Ford followed suit. A Mustang with a 6.4-liter V8 that produced 335 horsepower. To install the larger engine, Ford increased the length and width of the car. That's how Mustang started getting bigger and heavier. Each year it was growing in size, weight, and muscle. By 1973, the Mustang was 1,200 pounds heavier than the very first Mustang. In the meantime, the second generation Camaro was having a rocky start, but it would actually become one of the most successful generations. The generation of Camaros were wider and lower in height. In 1974, Chevy added aluminum bumpers to the front and rear. In contrast, the second generation Mustang then went on a weight loss program. It looked very little like the first generation. The generation was originally based on the Ford Pinto. It was smaller and lighter with a 4-cylinder engine, counter rising gas prices. Ford also discontinued the convertible version. The Mustang II was presented as an upscale economy car. Then, as the oil crisis was ending, Americans started returning to large cars, and Ford started offering the Mustang II with a 4.9-liter V8 engine option. Then came the third generation Mustang. It was built on the Fox platform. Cars from the first half of this generation came with a front end that was tilted back with 4 rectangular headlights known as the 4 Eyes. For the second half of this generation, the front end featured rounded Ford Taurus styling with flush-mounted composite headlights and a sleek nose without grille. In 1983 saw the return of the Mustang convertible after a 9-year hiatus. Meanwhile, the third generation Camaro came with an all-new architecture, contemporary front suspension, and rack and pinion steering. During this time, America saw the first Camaro hatchback body. This generation also saw the first Camaros with modern fuel injection, and also the first Camaros to be offered with a 4-cylinder engine. Then Ford did a major redesign on the 4th generation Mustang. America saw a jelly bean shape with some first generation elements, and also a comeback with the traditional pony grille emblem and side scoops. The basic Mustang offered a 3.8-liter V8 and a 5-speed manual transmission. A 4-speed automatic came as an option. Ford boosted the performance of the Mustang GT with a 5-liter V8. This generation of Mustangs also came with bold, vivid colors like bright yellow, greens, purple, and metallic hues. Meanwhile, the 4th generation Camaros were much more sharper and dramatic than before. But competing Mustangs were lighter and more powerful. So Chevy added a 275 horsepower LT1 small block engine that was 60 horses more powerful than the competing 4th generation Mustang. But ultimately, the 4th generation Camaro saw declining in sales, and sadly, Chevy stopped producing the Camaro in 2002. And Ford went for more dramatic muscle. The 5th generation Mustang has more squarish and even more retro styling. The front grille and headlight placement resembled earlier models. The first half of this generation, the Mustang featured a 4-liter V6, 4.6-liter V8, and 4.V8 or a 5.4-liter supercharged V8. Transmissions included a 5 or 6-speed manual or 5-speed automatic. The second half of this generation saw a facelift and better aerodynamic. One of the striking features was the sequential tail lights. The 5th generation Mustang came in just in time to greet the new 5th generation Camaro, which emerged from its 8-year hiatus. That's because Chevy noticed Mustang's retro redo, so the Camaro made a comeback with the new 5th generation. It was offered with the LS3 engine, which took the base power of the SS models to over 400 horsepower. The 5th generation also became well known because of its role in the Transformers movies. Then Mustang left the earlier retro style and shifted to a more futuristic European look. The 6th generation came with a fully independent rear suspension as standard equipment. This generation saw the first Mustang to be sold globally. It came with 4 main engine options. 2018 was a milestone year for the Mustang. That year, Ford made its 10 millionth Mustang. They also started selling Mustangs with the 10-speed automatic transmission and the EcoBoost turbocharged 4-cylinder engine instead of a V6. Not long afterwards, Ford announced the 2020 Mustang Mach-E, which was a new 4-door electric crossover. Ford also introduced 2020 Shelby GT500 as the most powerful Mustang ever made with 760 supercharged horsepower. Meanwhile, Camaro 2 is currently in its 6th generation. These are lighter, stronger, and more powerful than their predecessors. It's built on the same architecture as the Cadillac ATS, and almost everything under the hood is new. This generation includes the most powerful Camaro ever. The ZL1 with the 6.2-liter LT4 V8 engine with 650 horsepower and 650 pound-feet of torque. Both the Mustang and the Camaro have been classic American icons that have been relatively affordable for the average American. But each has seen good years and bad. There are definitely better model years than others, and some models have received consumer complaints worth noting. So, if you want a reliable used Mustang or Camaro, which model year should you consider and which should you avoid? If you're looking for a used Mustang, some of the best models include 2011, 2014, and 2019 in terms of value, performance, and overall reliability rating. But there are some model years you'll want to be careful. For example, the Mustang 2015 was the last redesigned before the 2020 version. Unfortunately, the Consumer Reports reliability rating for the 2015 model is rather low. Ford also did 7 recalls on the 2015 Mustang, which isn't that little. Examples of problems for that year include door latches opening while the car is moving, as well as fuel leaks that could lead to serious fire. In terms of customer complaints, Mustang owners complained the most about the 2006 model year. The most common complaint was regarding water leaking into the interior, usually around 65,000 miles on the odometer. It's not a safety issue, but understandably an irritating one. Another common complaint from owners is corrosion on the hood and also the paint on the hood blistering, usually around 50,000 miles. The average cost to fix this is between $970 and $1,200. But the worst and more serious complaint with the 2006 model year has been about the transmission failing at 65,000 miles or so. In general, a common occurrence that Mustang owners have reported includes squeaking noises while turning the steering wheel. The problem is due to the outer tie rods. When they wear out and need replacement. Repair costs for something like that can be under $200. Another common failure is the magnet to the camshaft falling out, causing damage to nearby synchronizers. This is a relatively cheap fix, around $100. On the average, this seemed to happen about 110,000 miles for most Mustangs. If you're looking to buy a used Camaro, some of the most reliable models include the 2013, 2015, and 2016. These Camaros scored well on reliability ratings. The 2016 Camaro was mentioned because it's a complete redesign. Its engines were made to be more powerful and efficient. Surprisingly, one of the Camaro's least reliable model is the year 2020. That year received one of the lowest reliability scores, according to Consumer Reports. The biggest problem with the 2020 Camaro is poor visibility and also lack of comfort, especially with the limited back seat space and small headroom. Owners complained that there were too many blind spots and rear-facing visibility was virtually non-existent. Another major issue was lack of automatic emergency braking system. In general, the most common complaint reported by Camaro owners is the car not starting. Evidently, the ignition lock cylinder is the cause. The steering column has several wires that are prone to fraying and disables the car's ability to start, but this can be fixed by replacing the ignition lock cylinder and the keys. Another common problem is leaking water pump. This can cost more to replace, but you should get this done as soon as possible. Otherwise, you can damage the engine. Most Camaro owners who had this problem said it happened around 80,000 miles. There is no doubt that the Ford Mustang and Chevrolet Camaro are legendary. Both were born in Detroit, and both are stunning, powerful cars with a long history. Tell me, what's your pick? Please comment below on which is your favorite and why. If you like this episode, subscribe to my channel. Thanks for your support.